Welcome back, everyone. Here we are at Awaken Your Inner Genius. Happy Easter to everyone. And what better way to celebrate Christ consciousness than to be here talking about the Creator's principles. And so what a fabulous day to do so. We have an incredible team lined up here on the screen. It seems like lots of interest in this particular subject. You see John Bonzel, Jim Porter, Karen Elkins, Ken Pearson, and Margaret Rue. We've got a full house tonight, and so that will be a lovely, lovely discussion. Lots to share with you here today, but before we jump in, we are going to do just a quick meditation to the ocean. And I'm wondering if my beloved Ken would just lead us through the meditation, please.
Yes. All right, settle down. And this is where we decentrate as opposed to concentrate. So it's a little bit of unwinding. And the waves of the ocean help us to synchronize to the rhythm of nature. Nature is a 1-2 beat, which matches your heartbeat. So go ahead and open up your heart and try and tap into your own heartbeat with the rhythm of those waves as you unwind your thinking. Let your thoughts get longer and longer. And I'll say some words from the Divine Iliad that might help you to initiate that process. My soul quickeneth, as the glory of thy anointing light descends upon me. Thy light is all around me. Thy light shines through me. Thy light encompasses me. I am dissolved in thy light. My light and thy light have become one. I am immersed in my light. I am in thy light, knowing thy light. And here I say, be thou with me, so that I will not be myself alone. And that's it. You're not alone. That divine light is within. And as we unwind, we get more in touch with it. So just take about 30 seconds to just let your thoughts get longer and longer, and let those waves allow you to get to that stillness as good as you can. And remember, God knows what you're capable of, so you don't have to stretch. Just be where you're at. We'll take 30 seconds, we'll come back. Like a drink of cool water after being in the desert. All right, my love, it's on you.
Thank you so much. You know, one of the things today, it doesn't matter what belief system you come from, but the thing that I did learn as I was evolving in my belief system was knowing that this weekend was a weekend that billions of people around the planet were celebrating love in whatever way that they were celebrating it. And love is love, no matter where it is in the universe. And that's what we're talking about here with the home study course is, in fact, love. So several thoughts for you. I want to remind you all why we do this. John, if you'll read this quote on the screen, this is the basis for why we do what we do.
Mediocrity is self-inflicted and genius is self-bestowed.
And the next one, please.
If you can read and count to 9, you can master the secrets of the universe.
So wanted to remind everyone here that is, in fact, why we're here. And when we talk about this, I wanted to remind everybody as we take a look here, is that we started this Awaken Your Inner Genius to really have everybody focus on the man who tapped the secrets of the universe as an on-ramp to the home study course. And Karen made us this lovely image, and it looks so celestial, doesn't it? So cosmic and celestial. I thought it would be important for us to take a look at this home study course, which is available, and that's what we're encouraging everyone to actually get a copy of. But I wanted to show you my beloved's home study course as we were prepping today, because I thought this was fun. Wanted to show you something very, very real. So I was going through and counting some things today, and this is what it really looks like. So it looks so nice in the previous polished image. This is one example of what many Russell students materials look like. And Margaret, I thought you would appreciate that. That's a lot of years of study, and I know all of you on here have your own way of going through this and studying it, right, Margaret? Margaret's on mute. If you'll come off mute, please.
My home study course dates back to the 1970s, and I still have it, but it's in tatters. So I have the deluxe.
Oh yeah, you're reading from the fantasy one now, Margaret.
That's right.
Well, so I wanted to remind everybody as we go through this that what happens is that we talked about with this whole home study course, unit 1 through 9 was the science of man, and unit 10 and 11, the science of the cosmos. And I wanted to share with the panel something that really struck me today. As I was going through it, I said, I'm curious about how many images there are. In the home study course. And so just to show you, I went and counted the images for all of them, for all the chapters. And I want you to notice this one. This right here in unit 11 has more images than every other unit in the entire home study course. And what I found fascinating is that as I looked, and I went back and I looked at it like this here, is that when you take a look at this, the purple represents unit 11. So when you look at just what they did, I was just curious when we look at both of these, because it really struck me that one of the quotes out of this particular unit, it said, pictures remain in your memory for a long time, while words can be forgotten in a few moments. By indelibly fixing the pictures, which you fully comprehend into your mind, you will slowly become a cosmic thinker. So I just wanted to open it up to the panel right quick and say, I thought this was very curious. Any thoughts around noticing that the most images are in unit 11?
Yeah, I would say it's absolutely true, because every time I reread the home study course, I feel like I'm reading it for the first time. But the images do stay with me. And I think that's what the Russells were really counting on.
Thank you. Jim?
I agree.
All right, John, I was just curious about this. This just struck me that, you and the team worked so hard to colorize this, but as everybody goes through this, and I'm so glad to see so many people here with us on YouTube, on TikTok, and some of our others, that's a lot of images in one unit.
Well, the science of man is not as difficult as the science of the cosmos. So you can kind of define man pretty easily, but when you're going and studying the building blocks of the creator and the universe, well, you might need a few extra images.
That's what struck me today. And so I was like, wow, that's a lot. So for everyone who's with us, what we do is we come on every single week and we're going through the whole entire home study course. Now, I did want to mention, James, if you would show right quick before we jump in.
Before you go further, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to read from that segment of how amazing this message is, because you're right, Mr. Bonzo had a big part of getting this colorized. And that within this unit, we're going to read I'm just going to pull one sentence. It says, pictures remain in your memory for a long time, while words can be forgotten in a few moments. That is our main purpose. And by indelibly fixing the pictures which you fully comprehend into your mind, you will slowly become a cosmic thinker. And that's why those pictures are there, because we remember pictures. You think about ideas. I know for me, when ideas come, they come in a timeless image. I see it. I don't see it in script. I see it in an image form. So I know as a creative guy, that's been my process for creating. So that's really powerful. Just a wonderful, wonderful insight on, and especially when I hear John not reference the paragraph, because I know he knows that paragraph, but I'm just the fact that in his heart that had been in him to do and to colorize, and the importance of what we're doing here and how it all came sequentially at such a great time, because it just came out, right? This is not that old. This colorized version, how old is it?
I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years.
There you go, man. I mean, we're like, this is really interesting how it's feeding itself. And thus we know this is a very special time.
All right, I completely agree. So James, if you'll bring up image 15, please. So I wanted to remind everybody before we dive in tonight what this looks like for the next few weeks. So some pretty exciting things. So right now we're here at April 20th, and we decided to turn this particular lesson into 2 parts. It was too jam-packed with images, so much information that we didn't want to rush. And so as you look at the next slide there, what you'll see is where we're going. And I'm going to give you a highlight of this in just a moment. So this is where we're going. So we're actually going to do the same thing for lesson 44, split it into 2, because we're hearing back from emails from people who are watching the broadcast that say, I need more. I need more. Hello, Karen. Hello, Bruno. Hello, Dee. Hello, Bonnie. Good to see you all. And so if we'll skip ahead over here to slide 18, James, I want to remind everybody that what we're going to do here is we're going to continue with, okay, this particular unit 11 all the way through the middle of May. We will then start unit 12, and then we will get to the end of unit 12 about the middle of June. Can we all just celebrate for a minute that this is our 45th broadcast?
Wow. And
45th broadcast.
how about 4 and 5 being 9, completing the.
There you go. There you go. And then what we're planning to do, just so you all know, if we'll go to the next image there, is that we're going to start all over again. And focus, as the next image shows you, that in the rest of the 6 months for this particular year, we're going to do just what the Russells suggested there on slide 20. And we're going to go back through unit 1 all the way through unit 6. And so there is discussion about whether that's really the way to go and continue to bring people in. And so just wanted to have you take a look at that and know we've got some fun things planned in June. We're going to try to do some interesting things in between the old version and the new version as we're setting up. So kudos to the entire Awaken team, everyone you see on the screen, as well as James and Joey behind the scenes. Wow. Is anybody else blown away by that in addition to me? We're here. I mean, literally, like we're here at the almost to unit 12, and that's pretty exciting. So, all right. So, James, I know you were going to get started here today, but I know you had a question. You wanted to do 2 things. You wanted to share what a super chat looks like, and we had a question from last week's broadcast.
Yes. So last week's broadcast, there was a question that kept sticking with me, and felt like now would be a good time to recap a little bit about lesson 42. And that question is coming up. If our thoughts are recorded and repeated throughout eternity, how would you help someone who feels stuck in negative thinking? Often people stuck in thought loops seem to overvalue their thoughts, and on its surface, this idea could feel overwhelming and unhelpful.
All right, as we're uplifting humanity, who wants to dive into an answer for that one? Margaret?
I could try. I still remember Leo saying, she said, if you do something that's unbalanced, you can void it simply by doing the right thing. So even though everything is recorded and it's repeated as it's recorded, you can still void it by doing the right thing. So if you're predominantly doing the right thing in life, you're going to grow toward spirituality. So with every cycle, a little is added on. And so that's why you don't want to get into a negative cycle, because even negativity can grow. So you do have to really, I mean, that's why this home study course is so essential, because you can't help but develop into love when you read this course. So it's automatically going to set you in the right direction.
Love
Great.
that.
That takes the pressure off a little bit there.
Anybody else? John, you want to add?
Yes. So if you've got stinking thinking, right? If you're caught in negative process, well, you've got to do something to change your thinking. So whether it's reading the home study course, or any book the Russells wrote, or anything that would be inspirational, you need to do something that will force you to change your thinking. Or you can start listening to some beautiful music, or watch a few sunrises and a few sunsets once in a while. But you have to do something other than just sit on your keister and think, oh, geez, poor, pitiful me.
What I discovered during the most difficult times in my life is I went to gratitude. So when I walked through, I would walk through the world and say, I'm really grateful that I have legs that I can walk. I'm really grateful that I have eyes that I can see. I'm very grateful that I can hear. I'm grateful that cars were invented so I didn't have to walk thousands of miles in the hot sun. So what I found is that when that negative thinking was threatening to suck me into it, because that's what it sounds like. It literally sucks us in, and it's literally spreads like a virus in the world. I was just talking with a young professional this week about this very subject. I find gratitude is one of those things that turn it around. Jim?
Walking and hang on. Looping, which is a good example, it really is a great example. Looping through the same thought or patterns over and over again simply causes those thoughts and patterns to manifest themselves. The old saying is, if you don't want it in your life, don't give it a thought body. Well, how do you avoid giving it a thought body? Margaret touched right on it. Meditate. Meditate regularly and often to escape that thought body. And eventually, once you have gently escaped that thought body enough, it stops appearing.
Okay, Margaret, and then I'll have Ken make a comment, and we're going to just get started.
You know, if people are in stinking thinking, they should get outside themselves and be of service in some capacity. And if it's of service, it can be to other people. Maybe they should get a puppy, you know, because a puppy forces you into action that's constructive.
They sure do.
So, you know, I mean, anything to distract you from the stinking thinking.
Okay, love that. Ken, if you want to weigh in before I have James show us a super chat, and then we're going to dive into the first page of tonight's lesson.
Sure. Yes. This is one issue I certainly have dealt with in dealing with people with addiction issues and dealing with the disease of addictionism. And, you know, what you're talking about is a long pattern. So if I had heard somebody and they said, well, how do I get somebody out of that? I would say, well, they've been in that for a long time. And everything is a building process. But what you can do is surrender. And that's surrendering to me was surrendering to something greater than myself. And realizing the reason I don't feel good, the reason I'm consumed in negative thinking and I don't feel good about the world I live in is because I'm looking at it in a negative way instead of finding positive things. So gratitude lists are great. Those are all great things. But when someone's in a hole like that, it's like asking them how to pull themselves up from their bootstraps. It's not possible. So that's where other people come in. And so I would encourage whoever's asking the question, it's counseling and it's repetition of helping them to see their thought life, to see what patterns might be going on in terms of a loop, right? There's always that record player we're playing of my mother did this, my father did that, she did this, he did that, my husband did this, my wife did that. And that loop is all about a pain body. And if we keep circulating in pain bodies, we end up living in those pain bodies. And as Kimberly just said, which is really great, is a gratitude list. And that is where you start. And I would encourage you this, whoever it is that you're talking about, if you spend 7 days writing 10 things every day that you're grateful for, by the 7th day, that hole will be gone and you will feel good about the world you live in. 7 days, 10 things.
All right, so there's some thoughts there in the comment box. If you'll show Rita's comment, and John, if you'll read that, please.
Rita says, somewhere I read, quote, if you knew how powerful your thoughts are, you would never think another negative thought again. Well, that's a pretty true statement, and it's self-explanatory if you ask me. So, and they are. Thoughts are the most powerful things in the universe. So you need to learn how to control them and to use them for your good and the betterment of humanity as well.
I love that. Deb D. Tonkin has a comment there as well. Dee's been busy with her books lately. And Jim, if you would read that one.
It takes 21 days.
Yeah, Deepak Chakra, here he comes.
Go ahead,
That was
Jim.
a joke.
It takes 21 days to create a new habit. I would ask if some people are addicted to negative thinking. To break out of it often requires conscious effort and practice.
Yes. A lot of wisdom there. All right, team. So James, if you would show the super chat right quick, and then we are going to dive into the first page 807.
All right. We've had a few people who asked how to even do a super chat. There are 2 ways to support the show aside from purchasing a copy of the home study course or the man who tapped the secrets of the universe. One of those is if you would go to buymeacoffee.com/awaken your inner genius. And the other is to do a super chat right here on YouTube. So I will show you really quickly how to do that. Here we go. Okay, so if you'll see,
Sharing his
not adding.
screen. We're working through that.
There we go. All right. So if you'll see right here, we have YouTube pulled up. So if you scroll down, and you could also you scroll down to the chat at the very bottom, you will see a little dollar icon. So you click that, and you can add stickers or chat. So one of the purposes of a super chat is you can make your comment be more prominent, or you can just donate and help with the show. So you would just click buy and send, and it will process that, and then you click buy, and boom, there you go. You have helped us
All right.
the show. So
Thank you very much, James. And you also can go to philosophy.org. They have a donate tab, and you can actually donate through a 501c3 and earmark it for Awaken Your Inner Genius as well. So there's lots of ways to support, and everything that we do is working on giving it to the universe. So let's give, shall we? Why don't we dive into page 807, team? Exciting times here. This was really big. So this is why we're going through only half of it. So lesson number 43. Let's start with this particular page, 807. And Ken, if you will start there with the first sentence and the first paragraph, please. If we'll scroll down to where you can see the yellow and the green.
Sure. Lesson 43. We complete our construction of the wave principle. We have heretofore built up an understanding of the reason why light needs a method for transferring its knowing to a dynamic dramatization of the God nature by means of moving images of the idea contained in the word. Omniscient, which means all knowledge combined in its undivided stillness in an undivided universe.
All right. I was going to ask Margaret if you'll read that next part, Margaret.
Sure. It was first necessary to describe very clearly the nature of light, and especially that quality of desire in it which controlled the division of light into its spectrum colors, and the cube principle which gravity made use of to repeat its cycles.
All right, so I'm going to have us go on to the next paragraph, and then I'm going to ask the whole team to comment. Now, please know that Karen Elkins I'm not asking her to comment only because she's very busy working with our visual journey, getting ready to be at the end of the show. So do know that. So Karen, just send me a note whenever you are free, brain-wise. Jim, if you would, read that next paragraph circled in yellow.
If the creator were merely the knower and not the thinker.
No, and the thinker.
I'm sorry, if the creator were merely the knower and the thinker with desire to think, the father-mother manifestation of what the creator knows, there would be no divided universe, for the very purpose of that division is to manifest the father-mother idea of equal pairs of opposites. This it does by dividing the one omniscient idea into countless fathers and mothers, for reuniting into the one idea by the mutual interchange of each to each other. This in total is the thinking principle, and the light bodies thus created by this process have no real existence other than a thought existence.
All right, so let's stop right there, and I'm going to ask for our 4 seasoned students to be the only ones on the screen at the moment. Even take me off, James. I want our 4 seasoned students to dive into what needs to be said for these 2 areas. So I'm going.
Yeah, I should be gone.
I can start if you like. I would say the very first paragraph is describing the invisible fulcrum, or the undivided invisible light. And then the second paragraph is describing the anode, or the visual universe. And then the third paragraph. Yeah, go ahead.
There you go. No, I was just going to say, did we read that third paragraph? We did, right?
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Okay, just keep it up. Sorry, thank you, Margaret.
Right. The third paragraph, it's a little more deep, but again, it's the describing the thought wave universe. And whether or not and I think that's relegated to the invisible again.
What I would like to do is follow up here. You have heard me in the past say to try to teach yourselves to devalue. And that last sentence will help you understand that. It says, by this process has no real existence other than a thought existence. But whatever value you want to attach to that which comes into your being, that is up to you. And that's the learning process, the growing process. And that's how we evolve. But you should try to keep that in the back of your mind. Say, okay, what am I seeing? Well, you're seeing an image that has been projected from the undivided onto the cosmic cinema, and try to lock that into your memory banks. I think that will help a lot of people get through things.
Okay. Jim, you got something?
I want to read the first two sentences on 808 underlined, second paragraph.
Okay, let me just comment on that third paragraph, if you don't mind, before you do that. And I just, I think it's really brilliant. This really helps me to understand what's going on in this message and why there's so much talk of the undivided, divided, and then ultimately male, female, united in a physical form. And that is like, why do we even have a world? Why do we live on earth? What's the purpose of man, woman? And this is where it's explained here in this third paragraph to me, is saying the creator, which is the undivided one, we're merely the knower and the thinker with desire to think, the father mother manifestation of what the creator knows. There would be no divided universe. I mean, there would be no purpose. So the reason that we don't all know God as we should, as the divine light within, is that's part of the whole lesson of our lives of learning, is to find that the within is the kingdom of heaven. That's what this home study course is all about. And including, it's not just, as I go back to that PM interview where Leo talked about the three elements of this message, that this is the same message that Christ carried 2,000 years ago, except for there's a scientific explanation of how God creates this universe. And the reason that's important is because when you start to know the idea behind a rose or a tree, it's no longer just a simple tree, but it's now an idea. Just like in my mind, I have ideas, and now I can create just like God creates. I may not make a tree. I haven't made a tree yet, but I can create things, right? And I can paint a tree and I can sculpt a tree. But the reality of it is until I realize, but let me think of the idea behind a tree. Okay, the tree breathes carbon dioxide, which is what I exhale, which is another way of saying death, and I breathe in oxygen, which is life to me, and that's exactly what the tree exhales. Man, that's a brilliant idea. So now every tree has deep meaning and deep idea. So this is helping me to see the reason for this cosmic play.
All right, thank you. So Jim, let's go on to that paragraph you wanted there, the second paragraph on page 808 underlined.
Okay, this will take me a second, so be patient with me.
Do you want me to read it first?
No, can people see this?
Okay, so you're going to go into it and then read it?
I'm going to read it as I go through this.
Oh, okay, all right. Jim's on the screen then.
Unfortunately, my camera is not far enough away to get the notes in here. This is a rope. This is the zero plane. This is motion. This is motion, like strong. This is the 1, 2, 3, 4 plus of desire manifested, radiating inward as dominant masculine to its point of maximum expression in wave peak, and then radiating back out as dominant feminine, reborning the idea and crossing the line of inertia through motion and repeating. Look at the top and look at the bottom, and we're going to call those what they are. They are alpha, omega, beginning and end. They are also that 0 point, which is the inert gases that are the beginning and the end of every wave action.
All right, so Jim, I want to read this sentence then while you're doing that, because it says it will be noted by observers that a division into pairs must always have a balancing equator. So when you hold up your thing, that black line is the balancing equator, correct?
Balancing equator, yes.
Okay, the cube of 0 curvature supplies that balancing equator. That division into idea also includes the identity of every created thing. A man's entire body is divided into symmetrically equal pairs. The head is balanced with 2 ears for hearing, 2 nostrils and 2 lungs for breathing, 2 sides of the mouth. Even the heart has 2 ventricles to complete its pumping cycles. And that's what you're trying to show us there, correct?
Yes. But I want people to understand that this applies to every embodiment. Every desire expressed creates an outward wave that is a division between masculine and feminine, returns that, let me put it this way. As it happens, it is voided. As it is voided, it's voided here in the inert gases. As it's voided, it is recorded here in the inert gases. As it was recorded here in the inert gases, it is repeated here over and over again until that thought body has expressed its entire life cycle and returns again to stillness.
Interesting. So it's looking a little bit like a cosmic guitar there, Jim. So I'm going to ask the team to comment on Jim's creation here. And let me answer the question. Do you wonder if we are all on the panel geeked out or we make fun things like this to describe these kind of things? The answer is yes. All of us look for toys and ways. John's house is full of them. Margaret is always looking for it. Ken's always looking for it. We all just have this passion for creating it. So team, why don't you comment on what Jim created for us there?
Well, I was going to say, if you were... Go ahead, Ken.
I was just wondering if he made that in his workshop. That was
pretty cool. All right, before we get there, Jim, I don't want to go there yet. I see that. I want the team to concept before you make it deeper. John, what's your thought?
I was going to say to our viewing audience that if you were maybe slightly confused, as to the principle of the wave and so on after that demonstration, you're probably totally confused and not quite sure.
Actually, I absolutely love it.
I know I am. No, I'm just kidding, Jim. I was clear.
I loved it.
Come on. Ring like a bell, brother. Ring like a bell.
Jim, I love that.
This is all that takes place in every action, whether you're talking an entire galaxy or solar system or the most minute particle of light. It only applies these simple principles. Stillness, motion, repetition of motion, back to stillness.
All right. I love that. And I keep that up. And I'm going to have Margaret comment. And I want to say thank you to Jim for going the extra mile to do something like that for us. Margaret, what's your thought? And last thought before we go to break.
Yeah, I love the demonstration very much because it simplifies it. And I think the big challenge for us and why the images are so important in this unit is Walter Russ would like us to be able to visualize it in 3 dimensions. And in the last lesson, John said it's actually a sphere that's being created. So you have to visualize it in 3 dimensions. And there's an image on page 784 that kind of conveys the 3-dimensionality of the wave. And the big challenge for us is to try and always see everything in 3 dimensions rather than 2, because the home study course has to do it in 2 dimensions because it's on paper.
Okay, we'll try to find that image during our break.
Figure 56 for future reference.
Okay. All right. So we'll try to find that image when we're during break. So this is one of the things I want to mention to you. In June, what we're going to try to do is to bring up some of these core principles that are within the home study course, and yet we're going to do it all like across all units. We're going to say, oh, this principle is covered in Unit 2, Unit 4, Unit 7, Unit 9, Unit 12, because that is, in fact, what this is designed for, is to be a comprehensive learning curriculum. So much more to go. And remember that if you can read and count to 9, you can master the secrets of the universe. So keep the faith, keep breathing, and we will see you in 3. All right. If you are within earshot, please find your way back. Find your way back. You know, it takes a lot to be able to pull off this particular program. And here I am broadcasting from the Russell Museum in Waynesboro, Virginia. Always such a pleasure to be here and do this program with my fellow panelists, who for 45 Sunday nights, plus the extras that we've done, have been really, really dedicated to this. And so as we go through this, let's go ahead down to the bottom of 808. And Margaret, I'm going to ask you to read the yellow line and the green line, because this is why we're spending so much time on this particular wave principle. So we'll scroll up there. This is the bottom of the page right there. That is why.
That is why real knowledge of the construction of the wave and the why of that construction should be known. To draw conclusions based upon observed illusions is to make assumptions of truth and takes much needless time and effort from man.
Okay, so Margaret, I'm going to ask you for a pause for just a minute. James found that illustration that you were referring to in a previous unit. So let's bring that up, because that's all working here on this particular page. And you had mentioned that what we just talked about actually referred to this particular image. Take a look. This is what you're talking about.
Yeah, and this is really one of the three-dimensional images that are so powerful, because even in his commentary down below, he says its spirals revolve as cones in 2 of them, while in the central 4, the spirals revolve within 1 plane. So in other words, that's why we have 4 locking points, because the 4 that's in one plane, which is the horizontal plane, it's the interference patterns that we see within the sphere that's actually, it's created by those 4 in the one plane. So that's why, like, if you can visualize the wave in 3 dimensions, it changes everything. You know,
Okay.
it really does. And I remember Bonnie in the prior lesson had asked, well, at what end of the spectrum am I? Actually, we're in all of it. You know, I
Okay.
mean, we're every color, really. You know, so in other words, it's a graduation of the entire process is manifested by our bodies.
Well, and what I'd like to have everyone really look at, it says there in the right above the where it says figure 56, it says the cube and the sphere are the sole working tools of creation. So if you would just comment on that right quick, John, before we continue with this particular lesson. That's what we keep going back, the cube and the sphere.
Right. We talked about that earlier, that those are the only 2 tools the creator used to bring the demonstration of idea on the cosmic stage. And if you can, like I said earlier, if you can fix these images in your mind, so when we talk about the wave, right, you know, the wave can only be created from the cube and the sphere interacting with each other. So don't try to overcomplicate it and overthink it. And, you know, unless you're going to MIT, just try to keep it simple and generalize it.
All right. So Ken is taking care of the cat who is trying to play the piano behind him. I guess even the cat is inspired to make music. So
You know,
So-
I will say something on that, if you don't mind. And I thought that was really good because it's going to come up later. This particular matter of fact, what Margaret was talking about, BB, will come up later in this lesson. It'll reference it about how difficult it was to be able to show these shapes and how they take form and why it had to come in sequences like that. But as John said, if you keep the cube and the sphere in mind, all these shapes will really make sense to you. They actually end up making, doesn't matter what form they are, you know, the basis of them come from the cube and the sphere. And I really like what Margaret said. You know, every thought has within it all the color spectrum and all the progressions of every element of how every element of matter is created. So some said about thoughts about outside of ourselves. Well, no, every thought has a wave and builds a body within your own consciousness. Every thought is a body and creates a body within you. So when someone talks about being in a hole, it was said it's because you've been in repetitive negative thinking. That's how those holes happen. So this can also help you to get out of those holes too, ways to get out of them. It's not that complicated. One good thought reverses a negative thought. That's as simple as it gets.
So I know that I will come to you, Jim. I know that Joey behind the scenes is trying to come up with some demonstration tools for that exact image that we can go through. And before I hand it over to Jim, I do want to say a gracious thank you. Deb said she loved that particular demonstration, Jim, and said brilliant explanation. And what's interesting before I hand it over to Jim, Bonnie says this is when you keep showing the tools, I find myself thinking about everything I do in these terms and dimensions. And that, Bonnie, is exactly the point.
That's why they exist. I want to bore you with my tool here once more.
We love your tools.
All right, so I'll hold it up. Here's a simple statement you've read a lot throughout the course, okay? Black line. I am within all things centering them. I am without inert gases, without all things controlling them. But I am not those things I center and control. Right there.
All right. Well, that actually, Jim, goes into what we're talking about next, because at the bottom of page 808, I'm going to continue there. It talks about, I'm going to go ahead and go down to 809 where the blue arrow is, James, because it's talking about the fact that we can't just, right above what Margaret just read, is that to draw conclusions based upon observed illusions is to make assumptions of the truth. And if we pop down to 809, it said the earlier scientists believed the world was flat. He could see that with his own eyes. Those words were the belief of the ages, and they still are. For some, that is true. So, John, if you would comment on that in just a minute, because when we go down to the next paragraph, what the Russells were talking about there, where I have the red and the blue right there, the whole paragraph. We, however, throw all of the combined concepts out the window. We are rewriting this revised and expanded edition to open up your inner vision, which lies beyond thinking. So let's just pause before I continue with that. Would everybody please that's watching write the phrase inner vision in the chat box? John, if you'll comment before I continue with that paragraph.
Right. What the Russells are trying to do here is point out the difference between observed effects versus knowing. All right, because man, can look at something and see a pattern develop, or see this after a certain time frame and so on, and then he draws a conclusion from those observed effects. And the Russells are saying, look, it's time to stop that process. We're going to give you the building blocks of the universe as delivered to those two from the Creator itself. And then you'd need to embrace it. Embrace this home study course, embrace these principles that we are sharing with you, and then apply them in your own lives daily.
So I want to read these next two sentences, and I'm going to ask Margaret to comment. So when they said, open up your inner vision. So inner vision is a really, really important word. You see it underlined there, which lies beyond thinking. This is known as imagination and inspiration. And these are the qualities which cosmic thinkers have acquired to such an extent that they can see that light of creation within themselves with inner vision. This is a quality which cosmic conscious illuminates have to a very great extent, and geniuses have attained to a lesser extent. Margaret, if you'll comment, and then I'm going to Ken.
You know, I think that inner vision and inner knowing has to be really developed through a lot of study, but also through quietude and stillness.
Yes.
And when I think of like even the human body, it's something we can see. But you know, the Russells say that man has overlooked space. In other words, space is not empty. But even though we're within this body, the totality of us is probably maybe, 50 yards out. I don't really know how far out. But when we walk in a crowd, we're really walking through one another. And we don't see that visually, of course, but we can know it because the anode, which is our body, is the visual aspect of us, but there's also an invisible half that has, similar weight, but it's way out there. So
we call that our countenance.
Auric field, your auric field.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, that's why I was just saying to someone recently when they were very chaotic and busy, I was like, you were splashing in my wave pool, meaning they were all into my energy, stirring it up. And I felt like I was swimming with someone who was stirring up that particular energy. And isn't that funny that we know what that feels like, but we don't always bring voice to it? Ken, your thought?
Yeah, hey John, just so you know, when I was splashing her wave field, it was when I was talking smack about you. She said, you're splashing in my wave field because you're talking smack about Bonzo right now. So quit splashing my wave field. And I'm like, damn, I can't even get one lake in.
That's it.
I
See that? Kimberly had my back. Thank you, honey.
Yeah.
Well,
she's like, don't splash in my wave field. And I'm like, man, I'm just dogging on him. What's up, man? Come on.
So let's pause. Serious. Before you continue that, Ken, I was not going to say it was you, so you're confessing. But what I do want to mention this is I want to mention this for us all, everyone who is watching this evening and even in the future. This is part of why negativity has sucked in humanity to such a degree, is that we don't understand this principle that we're talking about here. So when I'm negative and somebody else is negative and somebody else is negative, it's just like when we're in a football stadium and that particular negativity just radiates out. So we are at a choice point here in humanity that each one of us individually have a chance to choose to be sending out positive, balanced wave patterns. And the more that each one of us choose to do that in each moment, then what we're doing is we're bringing calm to this collective ocean called humanity. And I personally, Kim Faith, believe that that is why we're here at this time. Kenna?
I, Ken Pearson, love Kimberly Faith for almost that exact reason you just got done describing. You know, I really love, and Kimberly is absolutely right. You know, joking aside, we joke at each other to create a little enlightenment, but absolutely it can borderline. You know, I was once told a long time ago by my first mentor that, you know, alcoholics and drug addicts don't joke, which tells me most human beings don't joke. There's a truth behind every joke. It's a grain of truth, so to speak. So that does hurt sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't feel so good. So that negative energy has consequence. Just like I've seen in a room full of people through lecturing, if one person says something negative, other people will follow that negative comment. If one person says something positive, other people will follow with a positive comment. So it is contagious. This is a thought wave universe, and we are all affected by each other's thought waves, which is what Margaret just so eloquently laid out, is that we are walking through each other's thought waves all the time.
Yes, yes. And so, Jim, I know you're going to comment, but I would also like you to take your diagram there, your board, and I would like you to make that cord go up and down like a crazy cord after you comment, because what you're showing is exactly what you can show. So make it just go completely chaotic. I mean, so there are days when we walk through the world, that's what it feels like. Everybody's doing this, and it's feeling very, very difficult. So, Jim, you were going to comment.
Jim, can I say one thing before you do that, Jim, real quick? You know, in my bathroom, you know those door stops, how when you hit them on the bathroom door and you jiggle them, they make that exact vibration you're talking about, where you go, and then it comes back to stillness.
So, Jim, what's your thought?
Well, let's see if I can remember what my thought was here. Oh,
We only got till 9 o'clock, so
when you apply what
we got-
Tim and John and Ken have been talking about, maybe Margaret too, I didn't catch it as I was coming in the door. They're talking about judgment. So when you see a negative action or reaction going on around you in the world, collectively or individually within your realm, what people tend to want to do is pass judgment on that negative thought or action that took place. The answer, now when you pass judgment on it, you just locked on to that thought pattern and brought it back to you.
Yes.
But if you go into a state of peace, meditation, that stillness at center, see their center, which is there, I don't care how off balance they are centered by divinity, and send love to them from within that center, there's no judgment, and you have sent healing.
Well, Jim, I couldn't agree more. And to be honest with you, if every one of us could actually adopt this phrase, this is the Kimberly Faith phrase, not a Russell phrase, but I am in the room to heal the room. I am in the room to heal the room. And that's part of what really appealed to me about the Russell work, is that this message of love. And I genuinely believe that the more balanced we are when we're walking into a room, that radiates, and that we end up sending that message out to the universe. And so when I was speaking with a young professional and she was starting to make choices about whether she was going to gossip and be included in judgment and all the negativity that goes, it's much easier to tear people down than it is to build them up. That's just the general rule. I was talking to her about that we actually all are walking through the world with a chance to have show leadership of self. And so I bring that up only because we need no title. We need no one to come tap us on the shoulder. We are each a leader of our universe, our world. And that is, I believe, the genesis of what we're talking about here. Can you imagine if we had millions that were making this choice to walk through in a balanced perspective? Margaret?
Yeah, I love that. It's so well said. And I find that every time I read the home study course and then the supporting books, it insulates me from negativity. And I feel like one of the keys, of course, to keeping balance is to not watch the news.
Amen.
You know,
Amen.
I mean, you can insulate yourself a lot if you insulate yourself from the craziness of the news, because it's there to agitate. It's not really there to inform.
100%. 100%. Any other comment before we go on to page 810?
Should I turn off Fox News behind me that I got playing then?
Yes, yes, you should. Yes, you should. So I stopped watching the news, and to be honest with you, I stopped watching television 10 years ago, and my life has been better for it. So when I go into here to 810, I really want to encourage everybody to type into the chat box inner vision. I only see one who's done it so far. Kenneth, good job. Is that inner vision? Really meditate on that phrase this week, inner vision. I would like to bring up Susie's comments. So Susie, thank you so much for commenting, and so glad to see you, beautiful one. Excellent work to the panel. Your insights really help me understand this. Blessings to you all, and we're sending love right back to you. That's one of
LA.
All right, all the way out in LA. So as we go to the top of 810, we're going to cover the first two paragraphs here before we go take a break. And so if you would, John, please read that first paragraph, the fact that such inner vision.
Absolutely. The fact that such inner vision may not have yet come to you as it eventually will is the very reason why we print so many pictures and diagrams. Inner vision and inspiration are seen in pictures, not in words, and that is huge. Pictures remain in your memory for a long time, while words can be forgotten in a few moments. That is our main purpose for printing so many of them, and as few words as necessary to give greater understanding to the pictures. By indelibly fixing the pictures, which you fully comprehend into your mind, you will slowly become a cosmic thinker. The deeper your desire is to enter that coveted realm, the more you will comprehend these pictures, and the faster you will enter its doors.
All right. So before we go to you, Jim, because I know you wanted to talk about this particular thing, I wanted to come back here because what we're talking about here, and this is what actually led me to start thinking about this idea of how many pictures there were, is look at the kindness and the love that the Russells did for us as they prepared us for 10 units. 10 units before we got to the big universal concepts here in Unit 11. And so I don't want that to be unnoticed for us, because as someone who actually develops curriculums quite a bit in my professional world, this was very purposeful. And so when we talked, some of the units had no pictures, some of them had 2, 3, 6, 5, 7, 25 pictures. So what they did is they seeded all of these units to get us ready to awaken to the cosmic knowledge right here, where we see, whoops, my vibe board's got a mind of its own right here to see what's going on. And so I just wanted to ask the group to comment on that, because that's very powerful about how deliberate, and Margaret, I'll ask you to comment how deliberate they were in getting us prepared for this moment.
Yeah, I think another thing that I'm beginning to realize each time I go through the science is that the anode is very small. It's the one thing we see is the anode, and we don't see space per se, you know. And so you can visualize it. Say there's a speck of dust on the floor in your living room, right? That speck of dust is the anode. It's the visual portion of creation. But the space in that entire room is an equivalent to the anode, but is invisible. So,
all right, say that one more time. Say that one more time for me, Margaret. I need the dust analogy again.
Okay. So there's a speck of dust in the middle of the living room, right? Well, the invisible universe to create that speck of dust is the size of the living room, is the space in the living room.
That explains my domestic question for life, Margaret. Like, where did all this dust come from?
Well, all I'm saying is, see, the visual universe is a very small part, right? Space is huge, but space is not empty.
You mean the sense universe, right? You're talking about the sense universe that is not as big as the night. We have to see 2% of it.
But she is also referencing the cube and the sphere. So remember that living room, that space, the volume in that living room is equivalent to that particle of dust. If you could take the dust and you could first liquefy it and then turn it into a gaseous thing that would fill that room, those two would be equivalent.
That's
So we
right.
all have that.
Wow. We have a whole burst of creativity from the panel tonight. Yes, Ken, and then
And-
we're taking a
Hey,
break.
can I give a little more intellectual concept of that whole idea that they just shared? I'm gonna take it up a couple octaves.
That's an oxymoron, isn't it? Coming from Ken.
It's no. Don't look in the mirror when you're talking to me. That's not what I'm talking about right now. Walter Russell. I'm going to have to quote Doc Russell on this one, and he refers to it as a cup of water, and it's referred to why you can never die, why there is no death. And the reference that he uses is he says, take a cup of water and go stick it out on your wall, on your outside in your patio, outside your yard, outside, and sit in the sun. You'll come back in a few hours or at the end of the day, and you'll look, and that cup of water will be empty. Now, you wouldn't say it's dead. You would say that it's transformed into vapors, which is what Margaret's referencing. The space to occupy that cup of water went from 6 cubic inches to 60,000 potentially cubic feet, where the vapors now house that same amount in volume and proportion. It just takes a greater amount of space, but it's beyond our sense range. Yet we know it's there. That vapor is there. So that might be a way to better correlate that description there.
Love
About
that.
complicating
Very,
it.
very powerful. Very powerful. Wow, the panel is on fire tonight. So I want to say thank you to Bonnie. I see that you've written the phrase. Terry, Jean, thank you. And the important thing, the reason we keep encouraging you to do things like write them down is you'll find that all Russell students literally sit down with these drawings. We write out comments. We highlight things. We write them out. We make these things like what you just saw Jim make with a board. John's house is full of all kind of diagrams like that. Margaret ended up bringing some other things. You will find that the beautiful cosmic scavenger hunt that we're all on is actually a joy. There's another one, Jim. There you go. I mean, we've all got them. I mean, we're like obsessed, and so we're working someday to have like a little toy store. So do know that, Dee. I know you've been calling for that. So we're working on all of these things because, again, from the time I first walked into this beautiful Russell Museum here in Waynesboro, Virginia, we invite you to come visit. I remember the creator saying, "Creation is child's play. Creation is child's play." So, Jim, when we return from break, we will be going to the second paragraph that you asked to speak of in 810.
Can I give one more example before we go, just for them to practice what they do? I'll tell everyone here, your intervision already works. I want you to take this mechanism that you're seeing right here that Joey built. Now close your mind, close your eyes, and see those cones spinning and coming together. See the vortices. That is your intervision.
All right, intervision it is. And intervision is where we're going to rest here for the 3-minute break. Please come back and see us in 3 minutes. All right, if you will find your way back, please. You will find your way back, please. So before we continue and Jim jumps on with his next comment, I did want to remind everyone of a couple of things. So Jim, we're coming to you next, but here on YouTube is the Awaken Your Inner Genius YouTube channel. And I want to go to this playlist and remind you all that for all of you that are new, we have all of the units. So you can go to Unit 1 and you will click on the playlist and you will see all of the units, all of the lessons there. You go to playlist, you will find all the way up. Whoops. I'm learning, folks. Forgive me. So all the way from Unit 1 through 10. Okay, and we'll have some guided meditations. Brian Scott, we partnered and added some of the things that he's read. And we have some really cool things. We've taken the Salutation of the Day by Walter Russell that Ken Pearson did for us, and Karen put the audio to. Whoops, I'm about to play something else. Boy, is this thing touchy. So what I want to show you is that we actually have it translated into Mandarin and Spanish. And we have Urdu from Pakistan coming soon. So I just want to remind you all that we're working very, very hard along with the university to have a lot of resources for you. Very, very exciting. And so when you want to go back and see Jim's tool that he made for us tonight, then you can certainly scroll back even for tonight. So Jim, let's go on to that next paragraph that you wanted to. There on page 810.
We touched on the first two with the demonstration I did, but I'll read them again. Inner vision gives knowledge of the process which makes the radiation of heat from the sun gradually cool as its rays divide by the concave curvature into which these light rays from the sun increase. Oh, I could read it on the screen. I'm sorry. These light waves from the sun increase their distance from it. Same is true about the planets surrounding the sun. Mercury is so hot that even its metals melt or glow with red hot heat. Venus is so much further away from the sun that it has cooled sufficiently to have water upon it. But the water is so hot because of the hot planet itself that it is a thick blanket of steam which perpetually cools it.
All right. So, Jim, you asked to cover those first two sentences, and why was that important to you? Was it this point of the inner vision?
Well, actually, I gave you the wrong page. It was I'm going to cover 808.
Oh, okay, got it. All right. Well,
We did that.
All right. We did that already. That's what I wanted to check. Then I try to honor the interest of everyone who is here on the panel. And so I want to go on, John, if you would. The next paragraph, it talks about there's been a worldwide question. If you would just read that paragraph because it mentions gravity. So you'll see the blue highlights right there. Starting, there has been a worldwide question.
Very good. There has been a worldwide question as to why water flowed downhill. The answer is as simple as the reason rain falls from the skies or a stone falls to the ground. The one answer to all these questions is gravity. To know the secrets of gravity is to know why the universe of motion exists. We trust that these lessons will clarify this mystery.
All right, so to the panel, let's talk about that issue of gravity right quick before we go into 811, because we're going to go through 813.
I think you want to bring up that figure 56 will really help you here.
Okay, so the one, all right there it is on the screen. So, John, if you'll start our conversation, and Margaret, I'm going to ask you next.
So, a few broadcasts back, we talked about God in his tool pouch as the master carpenter. And
Good.
so gravity, along with the cube and the sphere, are the three main basic tools that God uses to bring idea onto the cosmic screen.
All right, so let me ask a question. Let me ask a question, John. So you're telling gravity, cube, sphere, and we've been talking about lenses as well.
Right. So, but the lenses are within the sphere.
All right, thank you. Keep going. That's what I wanted to know.
So the three of them working collectively, all right, is what gives us what we think of as life and creation and nature. So if you want to create, which we all do to a certain degree. So the sequence and the pattern and the process that how you do it is the same as the creator, but you just don't think of it in that terms. You know, you go, oh, look what I did. Well, you had to conceive a thought, you had to give it a thought body, and then you had to manifest it physically and bring it into being. But all of these principles are applied in that process. So whether it is on the cosmic scale, right, or on the
Right.
the other scale, I forget what I should say about that one. But anyway,
Well, it's on the micro or the
It's-
macro, to be honest with you, John.
Yes.
Truly, that's what it is. And I want to just pause for a minute. I know that Walter doesn't necessarily use the word holographic, although I'm going to have to look that up while Margaret's talking next. But I've been talking about how the world really that we needed to look at almost holographic leadership. That if we understood that each one of us was the tiniest of an individual, that we are representative of the entire universe, it's very, very powerful. And if you've ever gone to see a holographic concert, when you look at a holograph, the tiniest pixel of a holograph has the entire picture of the largest thing in it. And so very, very interesting. Margaret, if you could just comment on this discussion here for this paragraph.
Yeah, for gravity, you know, Walter Russell always said gravity is exerted from the outside toward the center. It's not a pulling into the center. So a stone would naturally gravitate toward the earth because the stone wants the same potential as the earth. If you fill a hydrogen balloon up and let it go, it's seeking an equivalent potential way up in the sky. It'll eventually go up and probably remain at level with a similar potential. So, but gravity works from the outside coming in, compressing.
Okay. All right. So I want to go on down to 811, and I'm going to ask the panel to please comment, because 811, where I have the yellow brackets there, it was talking about that the creator, okay, has made it come into being by thinking it into being. A convincing fact of this lies in the principle of mind, notice capital M, concentration and decentration, two very important words for every Russell student to know, which terms have parallel meaning to the term compression and expansion. That continues with what you're saying, correct, Margaret?
Right. And actually, I have another example. I was watering my garden this evening. And you know, that's actually compression and expansion, because heat expands, water cools. And so plants want a normalcy. If there's too much heat, it'll kill the plant. If it's too damp, it'll kill the plant. So the secret to gardening is to find normalcy for each plant. So it's actually exerting concentration, decentration, or heat and cold, but you're seeking normalcy.
balance.
I was wondering if balance would be the same word. Yes.
Right.
Can we pull up figure 63, figure 63?
That's where we're going next. Oh, you mean you're going back to 63 from the previous one?
Yes, just to show what gravity, the simplified version of where I think it's been explained, gravity's been explained.
All right, we'll
which is
work on
basically
that.
a bar. It's
So,
basically the same as a bar magnet, right? On a bar magnet, you got male side and you got a female side, and then the loops are the magnetic force. That is the gravitational force field. It's actually on page 60, figure 63. That's one of the figures we're coming to, but the one I'm referencing is figure 63 in the home study course.
Is this one right here? This is figure 63, as you see on the screen.
No, I don't think so. Love.
It says
That
63.
is figure 65.
Okay, so you want, it says 63.
That's 63. Yes. I'm sorry. The other one you had up before was 65. There you go. Yes. So that top one right there represents a bar magnet, and the lines that you're seeing represent the gravitational force field that the bar magnet creates. So when we think of gravity, can we go back to now figure, and this is just, I'm going to simplify it, figure 56, James, please pull that back up. Margaret said it really well, actually, earlier when she was referencing the tetrahedrons, and John was just talking about the cyclonic. So when you go down here to DD, and you look at that, you realize why Margaret was saying the 4 poles are on the horizontal plane. Those 2 poles that are above and below are considered your north and south planes. And those 2, one is falling and one is rising. And that friction creates a gravitational force field. Gravity means in Earth, 15 pounds of pressure per square inch. That's why the rock wants to fall to the ground. The apple wants to fall to the ground, because the ground you stand on has and every planet has a different gravitational force field, a different pounds of pressure per square force field. Just like if we were on different planets, we would be taller and longer because of the gravitational force field of that planet. So each unit in this universe has its own gravitational force field, which is beautified by the example of the cyclone, the tornado effect, which gravity compresses and expands. It does both. So that's why in Russellian terms, gravity is considered the desire force of God. It's a great way to say the desire force of God is gravity, because it changes mathematically, but it's always the same principle.
So if we could capture that, James, gravity is the desire force of God. Panel, do you want to comment on that before I keep us going here on 811?
No, I think it's well said.
Okay. One thing I want to point out to everybody who is watching is that you'll begin to notice how these seasoned students begin to refer back to the different units and they start collecting. In a perfect world, we'll someday just have all the sheets of all the images and we could spread them out in our living room and actually arrange them into a puzzle pieces and actually see the bigger picture. Imagine how much fun Walter and Leo Russell would have had in today's world of being able to bring all of this to fruition. So this is why June's going to be really, really fun. And team, go ahead and be thinking about the challenge, because we're going to be doing that very fun Cosmic Connect the Dot game in June.
Hey, Kim, some of those pictures would make great puzzles. We ought to produce them.
We should do that. They are very, and I know that's certainly in the works there. So let's go ahead to 811.
And one more thing, if you'd like to see a laboratory, sorry, love, I don't mean to cut you off. I just have to give Mr. Bonzel some kudos. We go to Bonzel's front room, you will see a laboratory of all these works. You would be blown away. We're talking light crystals, we're talking rings, we're talking cube spheres, we're talking everything. Baby, it's cool. And I have to tell you, he's taught me about the crystal effect and how the rainbow is reflected off of crystals. So if you hang some crystals in your window and you got the sunlight coming in, you're going to be amazed at all the colors that will radiate on your wall, which gives you the color spectrum that's right there behind my love, behind her right shoulder.
And he's got a partridge in a pear tree.
What I wanted to say to add to, and thank you, Ken, for saying that, but my theme is, as light comes through those crystals, it is God made visible.
Yes.
Isn't that beautiful?
God made visible. Write that down in the chat. God made visible is the rainbow. God made visible.
All right. Wow. So I just want to say kudos to the team tonight. I don't know what you all had to drink today and what light you're bringing in, but I mean, you all are on it tonight. I'm so
For me, it's the Easter bunny and these jelly beans that I've been eating.
Maybe it is
jelly beans, not the bunny.
Yeah.
Maybe it is the fact that we just have a huge love vibration wave, collective wave that we're all riding tonight. So maybe we simply invite in that love. So here we go on page 811, and I want to go back down to something at the bottom, because they go on and they talk about the diagrams, they talk about visualizing effects, and I want to jump down to the last sentence there highlighted. And it says, to illustrate our meaning, hold a cube on the level of your eyes, and you will see only one of its 6 sides. Holding it lower still, you will see 3 of its 6 sides. So to all of you that have a cube here, let's go ahead and demonstrate.
Oh, look, what page? 811? I'm sorry, what page?
811. So we all have a cube somewhere easily handy. So if you would, John, go ahead and illustrate for us. What does this mean here?
So, all right. So we got a cube here, right? All right. And maybe your cube is a better demonstration. Because it's wanting you
just torn it apart.
Yeah, man. See, those three inner planes are the projection mirrors. Yeah, what you're holding in your right hand. And just think of a sphere being at the intersection point of those three little planes there. And then that image, if you can see that, and that image is projected out to the 6 sides of that cube, and then it's projected out through the universe. And that's why there are no 2 separate things in the universe. It's all one. So if you can envision that cube being expounded and divisible and multiplied, you can see how an idea is omnipresent.
Well, I
Yep,
want
that's
to
a good
mention.
one.
Okay,
Yep.
so I want to mention last week we talked about that from the time that we were children, we all held a cube.
Yes.
So we all held a cube, and that many of
Figure
us,
69, James. Figure 69 shows that.
and as children, we held a cube in our hands, and many of us held a ball. So truly, from the time that we were born, we were holding the secrets of the universe, and we didn't know it. How stinking fun is that?
Wow, Kimberly, you're on fire tonight.
And
My girl.
Kimberly mentioned just a few moments ago that a hologram in its minute size can be expanded, but the minute size is identical to the large size.
It is identical. If you
So-
look up, if you go pull up any videos on YouTube of holographs, it'll blow your mind because it's exactly what we're talking about. And before I go to Ken, I want to mention to everybody, sometimes we don't have certain words that are in the Russell vernacular. So what happens is things have evolved since then. So occasionally people will say to me, oh, well, Russells don't use the word fractal. Okay, well, fractal didn't come into our vernacular until 1975. Margaret made a really good point to me that when I did a video months ago about my NDE, that Russells didn't use 5D. You're right. I should have said 5th octave. 5D word didn't come until much later. And so all of us, for many of us, even holograph, I just searched the home study course. The word holograph is not in there. But as we advance as society, we have new concepts that have become a common understanding that I believe can help us with this, with these very, very big concepts. Ken?
Yeah, I want to go back to the holographic comment. Thanks for bringing that back up, Margaret. And reality, and you said that Doc Russell didn't talk about, Layla didn't talk about it. In fact, that's all they talked about, telling it was all an illusion. It's a light wave corpuscle, which is another way of saying holographic.
Yes,
Just so
but
you know,
the
light
word,
wave is
but the word
It's a
holographic is not anywhere in the home study course. I just searched it, all 1,000 pages. So I'm inviting all of
I
us
agree,
as
but-
Russell. I'm inviting all of us as Russell students that I believe that's actually part of our responsibility and part of our privilege is to take what they gave us and expand it into these larger concepts.
So Kim, you're saying it isn't there, but it's.
It is.
Hmm.
There you
you think it's there, but it's not really there.
So you're saying that in a sensed fashion, the word is not there, but in a knowing fashion, it is there because that is
The
what
principle is.
Ask any one of the long-term students online right now if they know that term means exactly that.
I feel like I should have a bell whenever we have big wins like that. I want a little ding, ding, ding that comes down for us when we have big wins.
Well, James
All right.
can do that.
Okay.
He can have a bell ready.
Hey, I was just gonna say, I know John's got one around there. Come on, Bonzel.
All right.
I do, actually.
So I'm going. Karen is making some comments there in the chat box. So please follow her along. She's working on getting things ready. I'm going to keep us moving here because we're going into this next big image. And so I'd like you to take a look at page 812, and then we're going to go to page 813 that explains what happens on 812. So I want you all to get a picture of this in your mind. And since we scroll on that, let me go ahead to the vibe board here. I have it pulled up. If you want to take a look here, this is the width of it. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good way to hold it.
So let's make sure we have that. For those of you that have your home study course, you want to zoom in on this. This is the image that we're referring to as we get ready to go to page. I'll make this bigger. All right. So I'm still learning the vibe board. I'm working on it. So let's go on. John, if you would, let's go ahead and scroll down to the top of page 813 and describe what figure 65 represents.
You know what's beautiful about this, and plus being colorized. All right. Well, I'll read first if that's what you want me to do.
1 second, John. 1 second.
Yes.
Just 1 second. Just so Kim knows it's here.
Oh,
Oh,
ding! There's the
thank
bell.
you. Thank you, Jim.
Bell's been rung.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Figure 65 demonstrates the optical principles of octave multiplication by biconvex lenses located on the gravity bar in the direction of compression. There are 4 pairs of these lenses which compress, each one located at octave positions in their waves in the same order as the octaves of the elements of matter are located. Take note that these are enclosed by the cubes of zero curvature instead of spheres of maximum curvature, as shown in the previous diagram, where curvature is necessary to continue motion. So if we go back up to our drawing, right?
Okay.
Or hopefully.
Okay. Yeah.
Board.
James, I have it on the vibe board, or James will bring it up so we can see it more clearly.
All right. Now, so if you can just imagine that bottom bar, which they're saying is a bar magnet, right? And you see where 0 is in the center. Now, you know, Dr. Russell and the Russells, you know, they took negative out of the out of their language later on. But in this particular purpose, it helps man to understand, because science, that's what they talk about, positive and negative. But look at both ends of your bar magnet. Do you see a minus sign? No, it's plus plus, isn't it? Right. And so look at the pairs of the biconvex lenses on each side. All right. And so we're talking about optics. We're talking about projection. Ken, this is your field of endeavor with the, you know, cameras and so on and lenses. Maybe you could expand on this a little bit.
Yeah, you know, the one thing I want to point out about why we got plus plus is because we're dealing with bioconvex as opposed to concave. So that would be why we got the plus plus. But John's making a great point is what it's illustrating. That is a carbon wave field right there, which you hear Mr. Porter talk about all the time, about the 4.5 octave carbon maximum potential. And that's how it reaches it. So what you're really watching is you're watching how light rays, if you think of how they come in and they become, and as John has said, that spheres in that center, and they go from a wide to a smaller, which creates matter. Each one of those stages interweaves white is now just being weaved into a conical cone to create the illusion, as Kimberly stated, of holograph imaging, if you will, and we could call it a light wave corpuscle if for Russellian terms. But this is definitely a process of magnification. That's what he's exemplifying, is magnification here.
Okay, so let me pause for just a minute. Here, because as we go through this, so a special thank you. We have a super chat. I tell you what, every time that comes up, it just makes my heart so happy because we get to continue doing all the fun things, and it's just like you throw a little mini party, Kenneth. I want to say a big thank you to you. That is just so awesome. And as we go through this conversation, we're going to go on.
I don't know how I feel about you talking to another Kenneth like that, but under this guise, I think I'm okay with it. Thank you, Kenneth, very much. That is very kind of you. Very, very kind of you. It's very much appreciated.
So, Jim, if you would, I want to go ahead and go down to more about the drawing on page 813. So it says that down there, it's the second full paragraph. It says the drawing clearly marks the location of bioconvex lenses. Can you please read that paragraph along with where the little green star is? James will pull that up now on page 813. The drawing clearly marks. Yes. Okay, scroll up because we're ending at the dotted line. A little bit more, James. Perfect. Right there. Thank you, Jim.
The drawing clearly marks the location of the biconvex lenses within the cube enclosures of zero motion. Observe carefully that as compression multiplies in the cube, which encloses the larger lenses, the cube itself compresses at the mathematical ratio to include the next smaller lens. This ratio follows the octave wave relation to the elements of matter, which are endeavoring to multiply in each succeeding one of its 9 octaves until they succeed successfully at the 4th octave to close the whole carbon.
All right. So
God, that was such a turn on. I'm telling you, that was so exciting. I think that culminates everything. I'm sorry. I just got a little excited there. That was a really cool paragraph.
Well, I
That
think
was a
there's
bit-
there's a lot that goes into this whole conversation. So let's ask the panel just a comment there. So we're getting here towards the end of our time. We are only halfway through lesson 43. So let's be really clear. Halfway through lesson 43. We very purposely did that. In a moment, I'm going to be asking James to pull up some questions, and we did even have a question from Dee Tonkin, one of our previous sessions. And I want to pull up her comment right quick. Dee says this when we were talking about the dinging and the bell. She said, I'm like the angel who earned his wings, and It's a Wonderful Life, the bell of the Christmas tree. I totally think we need that. Every time one of us gets a big cosmic idea, I think there ought to be like a little bell that goes off. I'm sure in the heavens and the cosmos there is. So
We'll have to record one. Yeah.
Yes. What needs to be said here before we have James bring up some other questions? Margaret.
Yeah, coming back to that last image and the bar magnet, at the centering point there's no motion. There's absolute stillness in the center. So on the magnetic film that you demonstrated a few lessons back, that it would show no motion in the center. So that's actually, you could call it a cathode plane, or it's actually one of the surfaces of the cube, and then it's being concentrated to either end of the bar.
All right, so let's get ready to show that, Margaret. So first of all, Margaret, you didn't see our fun toys. So John, these were some of our toys from last week. And John,
Yes.
you said this one goes counterclockwise. Red goes counterclockwise.
Wind it in. Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
This goes.
One's out
All right.
and one is in. There it is.
Okay. Now I wanted to show you that. We have so much fun with this, but I did want to go back to what Margaret said. So Margaret, if you would, you've got it in your head about how this happens. So
Right.
we showed a few sessions ago. Here is one magnet. I want to remind everybody that when we showed it,
So
Okay.
the yellow line is stillness. So that's
Yep.
the centering point.
You
And
mean
then-
God?
There you
Yeah, God is the centering point. And
Okay,
then
but
you'll
now-
see-
Equilibrium.
well, hang tight, everybody. I'm just bringing everybody up to the car. Now I've just put two magnets in, and there was still one line.
Right. And so you've got the anode on each end. The two green, that's the plus and the plus.
Okay, I just put three for those of you that had not seen this before. This is Margaret's contribution to the Awaken show. Now we have four, and you will still see one line.
See, so what's so interesting with this is the centering point of the magnets always stay in the center. So each individual magnet has a centering point, but when you combine them all, it actually moved to the center. So God is always seeking the stillness.
Ooh, maybe we just drink that in for just a moment. Wow.
Yes. So the fulcrum is always stable and always centering all motion.
Well,
And-
this
And Kim, I have another thing we can demonstrate next week. I'll explain to you.
you all know we love our toys. We love our toys. And so I want to just go back to this when we go back and talk about rhythmic balance interchange. We also talk about this is the fulcrum. And this is what we're talking about here, right?
Mhm. That's right, because the fulcrum is still, but that's where all the power comes from.
Okay. All right. So any comment before I end up, James, if you would come on, let me know if we are ready for the video, and then we'll have our Q&A session.
Kimberly, I
Yes.
want to just for a moment here. I wanted to go back at the beginning where you said we're celebrating our 45th broadcast, and that caused me to think back to in Newark, Delaware, where Jim attended the first Age of Character class that was delivered by Howard Hall, and he held that class every year. And I believe it was Wednesday nights, Jim, if I'm not mistaken.
It was every
And
second
it
Wednesday.
went on for years and years and years.
Decades.
Now we're talking middle to late 70s, and you move forward, and then look how technology, and look where we are today, broadcasting to the world this
Yes.
message. And so I just wanted to, just point out how we have progressed and how this message is being delivered in the same concept, but in a totally
Yes.
different manner.
Well,
That
and
is
before
where
I,
I saw a scientist from DuPont come up with the first cube example. He brought it in with him, bless his heart, and I've been using it ever since.
all right. So before I hand it over to James, I do want to mention something as we mentioned Age of Character. So I really wanted to honor for a moment Jim's partner, Jackie. We know that she refolded earlier this year. And I had a participant recently ask me about why she had not seen her and she had missed the announcement. And I simply wanted to honor her for just a moment. So Jim, just know that we, the Awaken Your Inner Genius, fell under their original charter for the Age of Character Club. And I simply wanted to honor that with love. Okay, Jim. All right, James, if you would, are we ready for the video?
Yes, we'll go ahead with the video and then we'll do a quick question and answer session afterwards. So if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the comment box. This is a video from Karen Elkins. Enjoy. Oh.
All right. A very gracious, if I could have the panel all come off mute, please. A very gracious, I'm going to ask the panel to comment in just a moment, but Karen, you've been quiet this particular episode because you were working on some of these things behind the scenes. Just a nugget or two about what was inspiring you to pull together some of these visual journeys. I'm convinced that Leah Russell herself must be tapping you on the shoulder to try to bring some of these things to life.
I think the thing that is the most important to communicate is that the optical lenses expand, and as they expand, you get from hot to cold, and it shows you the compression between the male hot energy and the female, which creates life itself. And the creation has to be done by the cool compacting into that ice phase, which is important. And so when you actually look at a camera as a way of looking at a lens, you can see how the apertures change and how the focal points change and how that actually begins then to create the movie. And until you kind of get, I think the other thing that's important to know is in the box, when you see the tiering of the scales, that you understand that happens not only at a micro level, but at macro level. So it happens outside in the cosmos as well as inside. So you see it in your body, you see it in nature. So then when you go to walk around and you take that walk, you can look at how a tree grows. You can see how water funnels down a hill. It just literally electrically, it's an electrical universe discharging its energy. And when you can kind of see it from that perspective, you kind of get the understanding that the wave is contained by the cube and its organized growth pattern, and that the cube, but the sphere is where it unfolds in a controlled manner. That to me was what I got from this lesson.
Okay, so panel, I'd love to have you comment. Margaret, then John, then Jim, then Ken. Last thoughts, Margaret.
Yeah, I when I look at a tree, what's interesting about a tree is as it matures, it grows very dense in the center. But as it ages, it hollows out from the center. And so sometimes you'll see a 2,000-year-old tree. There's a park in South Carolina. This tree is 2,000 years old. It's still alive. It's totally hollow. So as things age, it actually ages inside and works its way out. It hollows out.
Okay.
I just want to make a comment on that, because that is exactly the thing that Walter Russell talked about. You only are made of water or fire. So water makes it grows, but also water makes it disintegrate. And so there you can see the expansion of the contraction of what the cycles of what water does. And so I think when it's to Margaret, it speaks clearly to that.
All right, we're heading to the end of our 2 hours here. I know everybody's going to be worn out. This has been, wow, if you could feel the power surge. Any final comments, John?
Well, I want to thank Karen again for a wonderful, wonderful demonstration of these principles. She always does a fantastic job. So thank you, Karen.
Thank you, John.
And then collectively, I'd like to thank our panel for all the contributions. And it's wonderful for me to be in the company of like-minded individuals. And I'm hoping that our audience can understand that principle, that as they join us, the only reason that they're joining us is that we have aligned with them and they have aligned with us in regard to our thinking. So as we progress, our audience will progress and we'll progress together. So anyway, thank everybody. Love everybody for being on board.
Thank you, John. And I'm going to show you another way that people can connect with each other. Jim, final comment?
Yeah, I like the whole principle of the idea that's been presented throughout the whole thing. I always say observe nature. On my property, there's a stream that runs from the top end of it all the way down to the bottom. The difference from the top end to the bottom is about 14 feet. At the top end where the stream is coming out of the mountains or across the road out of the mountains, it's very shallow because the water is just beginning to pick up momentum. At the bottom on my property, that same stream is moving so fast that it has cut a gap in the property several feet deep. That's the momentum. That's the multiplication momentum we're talking about. Same principle, different speeds.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Last thought, Ken, before I wrap up.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to what John said when he said it's a joy to be around like-minded people. So I'm wondering, is there a bunch of people over at his house right now?
Yes, they are. They're on my screen. They're on my screen.
I finally got Bonzo, man. I got Bonzo.
Ken, we're just little particle waves and we're all dancing together in the field.
We are all dancing in the
That's
field.
it.
Would you stop?
All right. So final
Now,
comment,
you know what?
Margaret.
I do want to say one more thing, please. One more thing. And I want to absolutely give Karen kudos. That was really great. I thought you did an amazing job of showing compression expansion and how heat heat goes to cold and cold turns into heat. And I think that is as simple as we can get. Think compression expansion, and that will never fail you on whatever thing. One more comment on the tree. Right? Most of my life until I got to this message, I only saw half a tree. But we all know there's an entire root system below the equatorial plane of that ground where that tree is harvest, right? And that root system is exactly in proportion in density and weight as it is above the ground. So reality of life is, remember, we're only seeing half the world, even though we know there's another half below. So try and see the whole picture of everything. And remember, there's a root system not only to a tree, but to human beings. We are rooted to this earth. We are grounded to this earth. You take us up to certain elevations, we can't breathe. So that was it on the tree.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Margaret. Last comment before I wrap up.
Oh,
Wait,
yeah, just
comment on that one. As above, so below.
There
Amen.
you go.
Oh,
that's
grew up.
beautiful.
There we go. So Margaret, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say last week I went to a presentation by a scientist, and he has a company where they're taking tar sands in Utah, and without heat, just with liquid magnets and light, they're separating the sand. They're getting clean sand, pure water, and hydrocarbons very efficiently.
Ooh, that's
So I approached him afterwards, and I had the Russell cosmogony in my hand. I thought he must know about Walter Russell. And he told me, he said, I've read it all. Oh, the home study course too? Yes, the home study course, all of it. So there's there's an application for the science
Bravo.
right there.
There you
Well,
go.
tell him to join us.
Margaret,
All
here's
right.
That's right.
the interesting part, because he did talk about the transmutation of elements in this end. He did talk about it. And when you realize everything, gravity is the thing that makes things glue together. And that's the heat and the compression of the different lenses that makes it scale at the periodic table. And it oscillates, between one side to the other. So when you actually understand the principle, one thing he very much says about technology is once we understand those principles, we won't need to dig it up out of the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so I think that is something that is at the time we are at the precipice, that if we understand resonance and frequency as Tesla and
Yes.
Russell
Yes.
did and the principles of it, there is no reason that we need to be doing the things that we're doing. That's hence why he wrote the book, The Atomic Suicide.
And what you're talking about here, Karen, is going to actually change what's happening in the world. And so even next week, we'll show a video that I ran across this week about a scientist and innovator from Africa who actually has created a car that runs on radio frequencies. We are about to live in the most exciting time of innovation that we've ever lived through.
And just got to remember, Tesla actually had done that before. There's actually people who've had run cars on water and worked that transfusion, but they are always been suppressed. So it is time.
It is time. Can we all just repeat that? Everybody, please place that in the chat box. It is time. It is time for a new world.
Time to go.
I'm trying to wrap it up if you all would let me. So Bonnie Maddox here is the last comment. She says this whole lesson was great. So she's pretty excited. And I did want to mention, because we have students, you also can go to philosophy.org, and please understand that under the museum, there's a gallery and you can see all kinds of images. But under the store, there are also events. And I wanted to mention something here, because you can also get the audio lectures that John has been talking. He's going to be broadcasting about that very, very soon. But there are other events. So you can join other students where you can actually go and join when you can check it out. So I wanted to be sure to encourage you that there are 2 events each month that you can go and talk to other students. You see how much we enjoy each other. We love these conversations, John, do we not? We love having these conversations with each other. And there's not a whole lot of us in the world. Let's multiply that by many. So it is time, Miss Jean. That's our final comment. Much love to you all. Have a fabulous week. Ride the wave of love, and we will see you next Sunday.